just curious, what do you think the average Mormon would think if you told them that God needs their service? You think that would sit well? It's just we're talking about a lot of how would that sit with them?
We were talking about this earlier. So the idea, if it came up that God needs us instead of just we need God, that would be confusing to them. They'd say, "What do you mean God?" Yeah, that wouldn't even compute. They would say, "That doesn't make sense to me. We need God. We got to rely on God." Almost to the point where people will pray and ask God to tell them, maybe this happens in your group, but to tell them what to do, what major to declare in college, where to work. These open prayers where, God, you tell me what to do. I need you to tell me. I need you to help me in times of distress and trouble. But I don't think, would you think anybody would ever, if somebody asked you, your mom, somebody to say, does God need us? Would that even make sense to anybody in our community? God would.
That's our question, because we're also asked to give of our time.
To God, right.
Because I remember the first group that we had for Brigham Young, we were speaking about it, and they told me afterwards that in Doctrine of Mormon, Church of Latter-day Saints, you're promised your own planet or something in the world to come.
Mm-hmm.
So it was totally it was all about sort of the reward in the afterlife.
It's all about that. And just an aside, that's become an embarrassing sort of. It's not emphasized, and people don't really talk about it, but the implications are there. If we're going to become like God or even a God in the eternities at some point, then we're going to do somewhere else in future eons what God did here. In some ways, it's a very beautiful doctrine. In other ways, it's really strange. People don't like it. So
let's ask the question a little differently. Not does God need, does God care? And if yes, why? Why would he care about anything?
Right. Why would he care what we do? Right.
Out of kindness, out of compassion. That's commonly the answer. But it doesn't make too much sense because he gave us these problems and now he has compassion.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Sorry what I just did to you. Why do we have problems?
Isn't there in Kabbalistic Zohar and other places the idea that when I'm not a Kabbalist scholar, but when there was an explosion and sparks went all everywhere, and there's a spark with each in us, right? And it's our, if I'm getting this right, it's from the Jewish perspective, it's our duty and our job and our objective to gather those or put them back together, something like that. So in that way, God does need us with that process, right? And how does that? Am I way off?
No.
Okay.
God does need us because the only way for the world to be what he wants it to be is if the creatures of the world choose to serve him. So he's kind of vulnerable, depending on us to do our... Of course, eventually we will do it, because his plan is not going to fail. But we got to do it by our own free will.
Yeah, that's good.
So the simple reasoning is, God created the world. Yeah. God created the world with a reason. Yeah. Is the world exactly the way he wants it right now? No. So he needs something.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean,
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's really good. This is where one of our founding documents, this is 19th century, it's called the Book of Moses. It's essentially...
we have 5 of those.
Yeah, that's right. And this is Joseph Smith's basically taking the first 6 chapters of Genesis and expanding them in writing. And in that text, there's a place where God sees what's happening between humans, among humans, and they're killing each other, and there's a lot of violence. And it's at that point, of all the things that he could be upset or happy about or whatever, it was the violence. And we also get this in the Torah. This where there's violence. That's why the earth was flooded. This idea of violence between God's creation. But at that point in the Book of Moses, in Joseph Smith's Book of Moses, God weeps. Like he turns and he's actually weeping. And we've got a scholar who writes about this in a book called The God Who Weeps. He's commenting in there that in the 19th century, there's not a lot of Christian groups, if any, talking about this. It's really like, Christian ideal is like, I'm going to find joy in watching everybody else burn in the last day. Right? It's this really strange, violent idea. But now everybody is talking sort of about this, an emotional God. But it seems like it's always been there in Judaism, all the way back into the founding text.
Yeah, so the text actually says, God said, I regret creating them. Well, what does regret feel like? Just vengeful? No, regret makes you cry.
Right. Yeah. I like that. I'm going to explore more of that. That's great.